Okay, Katie, starting.
Thanks. Welcome to everyone who is joining us this afternoon. I'm going to give it another couple seconds while everyone joins from the waiting room. All right. Well, thank you to all of those who are joining us for this virtual event in honor of Earth Day, which happened last week. We know that the world is a fascinating place, and I, for one, love to learn more about parts of the Earth that I don't know about. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. My name is Katie. I'm a product manager at EF Explore America, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Louis from Para La Naturaleza, which is one of our longest standing partnerships in Puerto Rico. It's a nonprofit that manages 30,000 acres of conservation land across the island. And our groups get to visit some of those sites and learn more about the island itself. Today, we're going to hear about one of the native toads on the island called the Sapo Concho. And Louis is one of the environmental interpreters at Para La Naturaleza who's going to tell us all about it. Before we jump in, there is a question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. So if you have thoughts and questions that you'd like to ask Louis, please throw them into the chat, and my colleague Sarah and I will make sure to address those questions at the end of the session. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Louis, and we'll get started.
So, hello, my name is Louis Santiago, and I want to thank you for your interest in learning about the conservation of the Puerto Rican ecosystems and the importance that you as a citizen have in the contributing of the protection of natural resources. In addition, I want to thank EF Explore America for giving us the opportunity to be part of the educational program, to be here sharing this information with you guys. Today, I have a presentation titled For Vanishing to Protection, Joining Efforts to Save the Threatened Crested Toad, or Sapo Concho. A little bit of myself. For 11 years, I have been an environmental interpreter within protected areas in Puerto Rico. And perhaps this is the first time that you hear about an environmental interpreter. In essence, I'm an educator of natural resources. Therefore, I dedicate myself to create educational activity to arouse interest, awareness, and conservation action in visitors. As a biologist, I'm in charge of the protection of endangered species, restoration of habitats, invasive species management, and so on. I have the opportunity to do this work in many natural areas that Para La Naturaleza protect. Para La Naturaleza is a non-profit organization whose mission is to integrate society in the protection and management of our natural resources, to increase the amount of protected land that is in Puerto Rico right now, that is 16%, to increase that number to 30% to 2033. Today, we will talk about the Puerto Rican crested toad, or Sapo Concho, a threatened species that is being protected by Para La Naturaleza. Before talking about the toad, let's begin by describing the group to which it belongs, the amphibians. One of the main characteristics of the amphibian is that their skin doesn't have any protected covering, such as hair, feathers, or scales that as occur in mammals, birds, and reptiles. So why do amphibians have their skin like this? To answer this question by asking ourselves another question. That is, have you ever seen a frog or toad or salamander drinking water? So they actually don't, rather they absorb water and breathe through the skin. They depend on water. They need places like rivers, wetlands, bromeliads, rainforests, and other humid environment in order to survive. Otherwise, they will lose a lot of water. Furthermore, due to their sensitive skin, anything that happens in the environment in which they live will be reflected on them. Any pollution, any pathogen present in the ecosystem, amphibian will be the first to be affected. Can be seen in different ways, such as the declining of population numbers, deformities, extinctions, or change in their behavior. That is why amphibian I consider it bioindicators. Well, biological indicators, which mean that amphibians give us an idea of the health of the ecosystem. Another main characteristic is the amphibian have an aquatic stage and a terrestrial stage. This is a very general characteristic in the amphibians. So they have a stage in the water as a tadpole, and they leave the water and then enter to the land as an adult. On the planet Earth, there are amphibians with legs that are the frogs and toads, are salamanders that are amphibians with tail, and caecilians that are amphibians without legs. However, in Puerto Rico, there's only amphibian with legs, and we have 24 species, almost 80% of the endemic species are threatened. The most common amphibian that you can see in the island of Puerto Rico are the coqui frogs. But there is only 2 toads present in Puerto Rico. One is endemic and the other is exotic. Endemic means species that are found only in a particular place and nowhere else in the world. On the other hand, an exotic species mainly refer to those species that occur in an area outside of the natural geographic range. In other words, there are species that were introduced in a place where they are not naturally found. Sometimes exotic species adapt very well to their new environment, then they end up competing with endemic species for food, shelters, and other resources. In some cases, they direct affect endemic species when considering them part of the diet. And this is happening of the king toad that is eating our endemic toad. And what's the main difference between them? Well, basically, the Puerto Rican crested toad is a medium-sized frog. His body is around 2 to 4 inches in length, and the king toad is a little bigger, is around 4 to 6 inches. Another characteristic is that the Puerto Rican crested toad have a curved nose and is elongated upward. And also, as the name said, a Puerto Rican crested toad, he have in his head a bony crest. Otherwise, the king toad have his snout snob and have a large parotid gland on the back. In addition, there is other main characteristic related to how they call or how they sound. So right now, let's go listen the Puerto Rican crested toad. Let's hear it again. And the king toad sounds like this. And the cane toad is widespread in the island of Puerto Rico, but the Puerto Rican crested toad basically inhabits the karst region in the island, an area that covers more than 1/3 of the island. Karst area is made of limestone that formed millions of years ago when sediment from skeleton of marine organisms and from a large lake deposit at the shallow floor and solidified. Later, tectonic movement raised this limestone rock to the surface, and it was exposed to natural elements like a lot of rain that through time dissolved this rock, creating different topographic features like sinkholes, cave, what we call mogotes in Spanish, and sometimes in English they call it haystack hills, and aquifer. And the Puerto Rican crested toad in the past, there is a moment in history that was considered extinct, so no longer present in the land of Puerto Rico. Later on, they found some individuals in the south part of Puerto Rico, and that's why they make action to protect this species. One action was to list the species as a critical endangered species. And the Sapo Concho, the main threat basically are the exotic species that are competing with them, and also the destruction and fragmentation of the habitat. Puerto Rico in the past have a mass destruction of chopping down the trees to be able to make more agriculture in the island. And so that reason, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started a program, a recovery plan for the survivorship and protection of the species. And the goal of this recovery plan is to establish captive breeding programs, reintroduce the species in their natural habitat, reduce and eliminate the threatening factors. And Para La Naturaleza, our organization, joined these efforts in 2009 with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So right now we have an agreement of collaboration to save this species. And the captive breeding program right now is in the U.S., especially in zoos. And so once they breeding the toad and have tadpole, they send the tadpoles to Puerto Rico in boxes like that. And then we release them, the tadpole, in our ponds that we create for them in their natural environment. And then we start incorporating our volunteer program. So we engage citizens participating in the recovery of this toad by collecting data from the different individuals that they catch. So they measure them, they collect data about their health, about the weather station that we have. And also we remove the competitors that are present in the reintroduction site. So our outcomes is that right now we remove from the reintroduction site around 105,000 toads in this reintroduction site, and all that individuals belong to 3 main exotic species. That one is the Q1 tree frog, and the other one is the cane toad. The last one, the bullfrog, we successfully basically is no longer present this species in the reintroduction site because of that effort to removing these individuals. And also we release a lot of tadpole that have been of the Puerto Rican crested toad that have been established in 2 main reintroduction sites. One of that reintroduction site is the Encantado protected area. Is located in the north part of the island, a little bit more close to the mountains. The other site is La Hacienda La Esperanza Natural Reserve. It's also located in the north part of the island, but more close to the coastline. Okay? And so right now we have a population, small population in the Encantada. It's around 5 individuals. But the most successful one is in La Esperanza. La Esperanza at night, you can observe a maximum of 24 toads during the night. And this is a measurement of successful, but it's not the only one. The other measurement is that if they are adapting very well to the environment, if they are reproduction, breeding in the area, and in La Esperanza, we can report a total number of 41 reproduction events since 2016. Okay? And of course, all this effort is made, and we thank to our volunteers that give us all the work and volunteers hours. And the Puerto Rican crested toad is not the only toad that is confronting serious problems of survivorship around the world. There is a lot of other amphibians, and scientists mentioned that right now we are facing an amphibian crisis. So there is a lot of pressure to them. As we remember, the introduction in exotic species, the habitat fragmentation, habitat loss, but also climate change is making a lot of pressure to them. As well, there is a fungus, a critic fungus that is making the population, a decline in the population of other amphibians around the world. So why we need to protect this species? Why we need to make action to save this species? Well, so many reasons. One is that they are prey and predators, so they are part of the food chain, and also we remember they are bioindicators, so they give us an idea the health of the ecosystem of the environment. Okay, remember they have a very sensitive skin. And also they are biological pest control, so they eat a lot of insects that can affect our agriculture system. And also for a Puerto Rican perspective, and I think this is the most important for us here in the island of Puerto Rico, the amphibians, especially the coquille frogs, are the national symbol on the island. So you can see around the island, especially near rivers, stones that have been carved in the past by the Indian people, the native people in the island. So we want to thank the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, also to the DNR Departments of Resources in Puerto Rico, the Association of Zoo and Aquarium. These are the main agencies that are working together in the protection of this species. And also we want to thank the EF and Extra America for giving us the opportunity to be here with you guys to sharing this information to you. So thank you.
Amazing, thank you, Louis. So we just have a couple of questions to ask, and I'll encourage anybody here to keep submitting questions through the question and answer window, and we can ask them as we go. But to start, we would love to know, what is your favorite place in Puerto Rico to get outside and to enjoy nature?
Well, there's a lot of places that I enjoy in the island of Puerto Rico. But if you come here in the island, I recommend you to, obviously, the National Rainforest at Junque is a huge area with a lot of history. And actually you can find there a lot of coquille frogs, and some of them endangered. But that's how the rainforest and other place that I love to visit, that is it's a dry forest. It's located in the south west of Puerto Rico. is Punta Guaniquilla. There's a very pretty lagoon. There's a lot of trails that you can hike, and it's very important for birding.
Thank you. So another question that came up, we were curious, or someone's curious about how you guys actually count and collect information on the toads. Do you count over the course of an hour? Do you do it all night? How do you guys go about counting all of these frogs and toads?
Yeah, by myself, with a volunteer, and basically be there 1 or 2 times a week during the day. So making sure there's no any predator, that everything is in good condition. So I make measurements of the water quality, etc. But at night we do these activities for volunteers, and we do it once a month for each locality, and we spend there basically 2 hours in an area that we already have designated to measure. And sometimes we go outside of that area to see if the Sapo Concho is spreading, to see the distribution of this species in the area.
Awesome, thank you. Another question that came in, someone was curious where the toads sleep and where would you find them?
That's very difficult, very difficult. The Sapo Concho is a semi-fossorial. That's when this species go on the ground, or sometimes they go to little holes in this limestone ecosystem. So that's very hard. That's very hard. There's people that do telemetria. Telemetria is like they put something that they can see where he's going, but actually nobody knows where they actually go and hide.
I have a follow-up question. Why do they like, you mentioned the limestone as there's an area in the northwestern part of the island where there's a lot of limestone. Why is that a space that they like to be in most?
Well, I think that is a general characteristic of this genus. These species belong to Phytophrynia. Phytophrynia, all these species, we have 8 species in the major Antilles, and all of them basically are in the karst region. And the karst have the ability that you have this rock, and there's more accessible to hold that water in that place, and so they just use that's water that are available for that temporary time, and so they go and breed and use the area. So that's why I think that they live in this particular ecosystem.
Great, thank you. Another question that I think would be great to know is, how did you start to get involved in the environment and conservation? Like, what kind of led you to this job as an environmental interpreter?
Yeah, when I was a child, I was very engaged with nature, especially with the Boy Scout of America, and I think there where it all started. I started working with the summer camp with the Boy Scouts, taking young children and young girls and boys to different places. And I think it's where I started being an educator of the environment. But later on, so I decided to professionally do a career. So I go to the University of Puerto Rico, where I did my bachelor degree in biology, and also there started doing a lot of research with the amphibian of Puerto Rico, especially the coquille frogs. And that's why here working in Para La Naturaleza, so it fixed together So continue working what I love to protect the species. And then here in Para La Naturaleza, so they give me opportunity to certify in this environmental interpretation, that basically there is a organization that is the expert of this topic, and it's called the National Association for Interpretation, that give us to educators the guidance, the ability to share the message in a way that people can easily understand.
Love that. Maybe some of the students on the call are interested in becoming environmental interpreters after watching this. Also, you mentioned the coqui a couple of times. For those who are listening, it's spelled C-O-Q-U-I, and I highly recommend that you go on YouTube and look up a video of the coqui frog, because their sound is like nothing I've ever heard before, and it's so fun to listen to. So that's another fun thing to do after this session. Any more questions, Sarah?
I think that's it that we have. I think maybe we can end on if you have any advice for young people who want to get involved maybe in their own communities with, you know, ways to conserve and protect the environment. Like what ways can they get involved at home?
Well, just share if around your neighborhood there is an organization that have a volunteer programs, and if you had the opportunity to engage in a volunteer program, that's gonna be very excellent, and actually to build that career if that's something that you want to do, you know, like be an environmental interpreter or a biologist. So participating in volunteers activity that give you the opportunity to build that skills, and that's very important, and in the end you can put that as well in your resume. So I think that's my advice if some of you want to continue this environmental path.
Amazing. Thank you, Louis. Thank you, Sarah, for all the questions.
Thank you.
Everyone, I hope you learned something new today. I certainly did. I had no idea that toads were amphibians kind of at large are bioindicators for how healthy their environment is. I also think it's so cool that we as citizens have a role to play if we so choose in protecting our world and our wildlife. So maybe take some time to investigate what parks or natural preserves are in your area and see if they have volunteer events. Sometimes it's something you can do just once every now and again. Sometimes there's weekly programming that you can partake in, whatever you feel like you have time for. We encourage it. And with that, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.